my friends, and a massive welcome to the Narcissistic Abuse and Trauma Recovery podcast. It's my pleasure to have you here as always. And today's episode is something really, really close to my heart because we're talking midlife, menopause, and narcissistic abuse. And very often we don't realize that they all interact with each other as well and have an impact on our healing, on our health, because we don't understand the symptoms of menopause, we don't understand the symptoms of trauma and the effect it can have on our health ongoing. And, I certainly know, I'm 50 next month. When I was in my late 30s, I thought, my God, my life is over now. I thought, that's it. He's had the best years of my life. My life is over. So today I've got an incredible guest called Valerie Clark, or Val, as we will call her, because I know Val. Val is one of my amazing coaches in my coaching certification. She has a absolute wealth of knowledge, academia around menopause. She's a trauma-informed coach. She's a narcissistic abuse specialist, positive psychology practitioner. So a massive welcome, Val. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast today. It really is great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're most welcome. It's a topic very close to my heart as well. Being a woman that is 50 coming up soon, also menopausal, probably out the other side. Actually, I went through menopause early too. And of course, have navigated my own experience of narcissistic abuse too. So just tell me, what has brought you to really want to work with women around midlife, menopause, and narcissistic abuse? And why are we putting all of those together?
For me, it wasn't till midlife really that I realised that there wasn't something terribly wrong with me. And that I wasn't a victim, as my mother had always told me that I was, that it was just life's events. It was childhood trauma. It was being married to a narcissist that made me that victim, if you like. And I just thought that was my life. And then when I got to my midlife, and midlife really is from 40 to 60 these days, you then start to go through your perimenopause symptoms and your menopausal symptoms, and you can actually feel like you're just going crazy. And all your past just catches up with you and triggers you. And you just, sometimes you can even feel like you just can't go on and feel completely like you're unworthy, you're unimportant, and it's all your fault. And that's exactly what happened to me. I ended up having epileptic seizures, and I went to the GP. I actually obviously thought it was the worst thing. And I had a brain scan, which was really scary. And there wasn't anything sinister. But he said to me, are you under stress and anxiety? It was pre-COVID. I was a bit, but not that much. And he said, have you ever had a trauma in your life? And I said, well, no, not really. And then when I came home, I thought, of course I have. Yeah. Of course I have.
And I think this is a really important point here, I think, as well, Val, that many of us who've experienced narcissistic abuse don't actually understand, firstly, what a narcissist is or what narcissistic abuse is. I certainly didn't know when I came out of my marriage to my ex, and also what exactly trauma is as well. We may have listeners today who may be experiencing narcissistic abuse right now and actually not realizing that that is trauma and not realizing that they've actually experienced other trauma in their lives. Can you explain to the listeners a bit about what trauma is and how that can then impact, somebody coming late 30s onwards into menopause, midlife, and the impact that can then have with narcissistic abuse? What is trauma, and what does trauma have to do with any of this?
So first thing I always say is trauma is what you say it is. Okay, it's not a little t, not a big T for me. It's trauma is however a negative past experience triggers you and leaves you feeling. And sometimes that can be extreme and it can debilitate you so that you can't get out of bed. For me, I developed chronic disease. I developed a thyroid disease through my post-narcissistic marriage. Trauma for me was my mother fostered me at a very young age, and she would never talk about it. And I just thought that was what it was. That was how it was. And later in life, I realised that there was no attachment. And so I grew up traumatised, really. I thought everybody was going to reject me. Everybody was going to abandon me. And that is trauma. And that feeling, if you like, for me, it's a feeling in your body as well as your thoughts, that stayed with me my whole life. Even now, even though I've done a lot of inner work, that fear of the rejection and abandonment is trauma, and it's continued on throughout my life, and it's affected lots of different areas of my life and my behaviours. So I think people sometimes think that trauma is surviving a war or a road traffic accident, but actually it can be really negative life experiences. It could be divorce. I went through a divorce as well as a chronic illness, and I suffered postnatal depression. And when you put it all together, when you do your own trauma timeline, it's amazing, and you suddenly look at it and think, yes, that is why I'm like I am. That's why I feel like I do.
I think as well, when we talk about this, I know I certainly felt this, the shame of, that happened in the past. Get on with it, Caroline. Come on, like stiff upper lip. And I didn't realize that from a embodiment perspective, a trauma gets stored in our body. It literally gets stuck. And, I love the analogy of, we've all got this kind of invisible rucksack, we have this backpack. And then all of these interpretations and perceptions that we have from adults, events in our life, we're putting these kind of pebbles, rocks, boulders sometimes into our rucksack that maybe others can't see, but it doesn't mean they're not there. And I think this is one of the key things, and I know you're really passionate about working with women in this space around this, is that very often as women, we kind of get on with it because we have to a lot of the time. If we're running a household, we have children, we might have a job, and we have to get on with it. But actually, it's our inner child, the wounded inner child, that's running how we might have an adult body, but our decision-making, our triggers that are happening to us are being ran from our past experiences. Even if, as we look back, we know they're in the past, our body tells a different story. And I think this is why the work you do is so important, because I think as women, once we start to hit the sort of late 30s, 40s, 50s onwards, and we may be going through menopause and reaching points of our life where we're looking at what we've experienced and realizing maybe this has an impact, but we don't know where to start. How do we start to unravel all of this? What is narcissistic abuse? What is trauma? What is the menopause? And it can feel like our head is going to explode. So how do you work with people to help people navigate, realizing that they may be going through menopause, maybe they've experienced narcissistic abuse and just coming out of a marriage, understanding that they have had a dysfunctional childhood, and not even from a concept perspective, I always thought I had a great childhood, but actually, I had a very unemotional father, for instance. How do we navigate all of that together? So as women, as we're in our late 30s onwards, we don't start to think, well, I'm a shriveled old prune now, my life is over, and that's it.
Yeah, I think that is the thing for me. That's what happened to me midlife, and it was kind of like a mini crisis that I'd hit again in my life. And it was that I'm just had a 60th birthday 61 this year.
Oh my God, sorry, I just have to stop right now, okay? So if you're listening to this on the podcast, you need to go over to my YouTube channel as well, because Val does not look like this. You can have a whole business of how to look amazing at your age.
Yeah,
well.
maybe this is what trauma can do for you.
Exactly, absolutely. Hey, I'm nearly 50 as well, so I think we're like, yay to the women that are getting older and starting to finally live our lives, right?
Keeps you on your toes. I think that for me, it was about survivorship, and it was about understanding who I am. Why do I feel the way I do? What has happened to me? And when you dig deep and you get some therapy and you talk to somebody about it, and you work through that polyvagal theory, which was life-changing for me, learning where I am at what different stages of my thinking and feeling.
Yeah, just for those listeners thinking, what is polyvagal theory? It's basically the hierarchy of our nervous system. And, it's whether we're feeling safe and connected in what we call our ventral vagal part of our system, fight, flight, which is our sympathetic, or we're in freeze, which is in our dorsal vagal part as well. And, every single human being, we have our autonomic nervous system that creates obviously that feeling of safety or fight, flight, and freeze. And polyvagal theory really explains this by Stephen Porges really, really well. And like you say, you know, when we realize this, that actually when we feel a certain way is actually just our nervous system, it's not a conscious thought, it's our nervous system taking over to protect us, it can really start to help lift all of that shame, can't it?
And I think that truly is. So my nervous system, as you know, cortisol's been rushing through my body from a very young child. And I think those are the causes of a lot of my autoimmune diseases. And I never knew about any of that. And now I do know, and I understand that there are resources, there are tools, there are ways you can help yourself and calm your mind. Take control of this. You don't have to be that victim of trauma. You can take control as best you can. Reduce your, like, so if you're living with a narcissist, you know, reduce your exposure, learn how to manage it. And I think it can really empower you as a woman, help you to reclaim that power, particularly, as I say, in midlife, because often midlife, from 40s, you are through the menopause, perhaps you're caregiving for your parents, perhaps you're empty nesting. That was heartbreaking for me because of my abandonment and rejection from my mother. When my children left home, it triggered me all over again. And it's about harnessing all of that, you know, the low mood, brain fog. Of course, your physical symptoms are going to happen whether you like it or not. Menopause is coming for you, but that can also be positive too. You know, you can embrace it, do things about it, change your lifestyle up, get educated about all of this thing. And that's the key thing here, I think, for us women, is taking control, getting educated about trauma, midlife, menopause, narcissism, and taking control of our lives and making those decisions.
I think, like you say, and again, I'm kind of thinking, I've got an 18-year-old son who's just gone off to uni. My daughter's still at home at the moment. And I think, had I not done all of my inner work, you know, that emptiness would have hit me hard. And I think when we've been through, you know, various types of childhood trauma, and remember, that's not just trauma where there's been abuse, it could still be an unemotional parent, your parents got divorced, it's not about, you know, what it is, it's your perception of what it is and what you start to say to yourself about that. For me, it was, I'm not good enough. And so I completely abandoned myself. So, you know, I looked externally for my worth all of the time, which is, of course, then, you know, what the narcissist does so beautifully at the start when they're love bombing. But then when you have a family, obviously, your children become that sense of external validation for you. So like you say, it's like this perfect storm, isn't it? As we start to go into our 40s. And again, it depends what time when we've had children as such. But, you know, our children are getting older, whether they're even leaving home or just going off and being teenagers and doing all of the things that they want to do and not needing you as much. It can feel like, well, hey, I'm either divorced or I'm still with a narcissist, or my children are going off doing their stuff. And it's almost like, what about me? You know, who's giving me my sense of worth now? And what I love about what you do, Val, is that's where you come in. You're coming in to work with these women that are doubting their sense of worth and who have literally abandoned themselves for decades, let's be honest, and giving them that sense of worth back, to realize, hey, we have the rest of our life to live here, not just exist.
Yeah, completely. I think that's really key. And I've found that certainly, I think the last 5 years particularly, I've gained a bit more confidence about myself. I've accepted my myself, my figure, the way I look, all of those things. That's, you know, acceptance and validation is quite important to empowerment and then moving forward. And I think you have to find it within. It has to come from within, and you have to want to find that. And I think up to a certain age, you kind of feel just done, finished, you know, end of. And it's not like that. And I will actually say, I think postmenopausal and being 60 is brilliant. I'm having one of the best times of my life now, in that I know what I want, where I'm doing. I've got 2 businesses that I'm running. I've got a beautiful granddaughter that I look after. I play golf. Life's good. You know, I'm not saying it's not good all the time, and I do still get triggered sometimes, but I know I'm getting triggered.
Yeah, we're all human at the end of the day,
I
aren't we?
know.
We're never not going to be triggered at some stages. That's not what healing is about. Healing's not about never feeling anything. It's bringing awareness to it, isn't it? And
Yeah,
bouncing back much
definitely.
quicker. Yeah.
Definitely. And something I think you said to me very early on that stayed with me, and that is that healing is not a one-off thing. You don't just go somewhere and get healed. It's a journey. There might not be an end destination. It might not be what you want, because like you said earlier, it's about perception. But just on a brighter note about my childhood trauma, after doing all my recovery work this year, I sent my mother a Mother's Day card that said, "I love you." And I've never done that my whole life, because I always looked for something that just had flowers and not too many words, because I never felt I did love her. And I sent it, and my understanding is when she read it, she cried. Now, she's never been able to talk to me about that, but I feel healed. I
Wow.
feel that I've done a 360. It's not about me, it's about her. I think she does still hurt, but that's the power of healing, finding who you are, why you behave, getting into your head and understanding why you get triggered. That's a very bright light for someone like me who spent their whole life thinking that I was unloved and unwanted because I was fostered. But actually, I know that it was hard for her, and it's an amazing feeling. Now, I'm not saying she doesn't trigger me, because she'll say something and I'm just like, oh, but I'm healed. I
Yeah.
would say I'm healed. And that's a really positive note for lots of midlife ladies. Just know that you can turn things around.
Yeah, I think that's the key, isn't it? Knowing that how you feel right now doesn't mean that this is now a life sentence for you, and it doesn't
No.
have to be forevermore, that there is hope. But you have to be intentional to make those changes. Sadly, thinking, well, as I get older, I'll be better, and that it doesn't, nervous system stuff doesn't work like that. We actually have to be intentional with it for us to do that. As I've been doing some work around my own healing, Val, and I thought I was progressing. And then all of a sudden, I thought I was going backwards as well. And I didn't actually realize that I was perimenopausal at that stage as well. Can you talk a little bit about the types of symptoms people should be looking out for, so that we can start to separate a little bit what is the feelings of trauma in our body, what are the symptoms of menopause, and how do they kind of integrate together to maybe exacerbate each other? And then what can we do about that? If you could, because I know, again, as women, we're all going to go through the menopause. We all will. Okay. So how do we navigate that so it doesn't hinder our healing, but knowing it's happening to support that process?
So I think, so if you look at perimenopause, which is the 3 years prior to your postmenopause, which can start from some young ladies from 35 onwards, you'll start to have what we call vasomotor experiences, which is really the flushes, the heart palpitations, all the physical symptoms of the menopause. And all it is your hormone levels are fluctuating massively from day to day, which is why we don't recommend blood tests. And that's about 3 years you go through that, and you can start to feel very anxious, and you start to get that brain fog, so losing your keys. What a classic for me was going to the car park and not remembering where I'd parked my car.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and then you can end up dissolved in tears, because you just think, seriously, I'm sure I parked it there. So those kind of physical symptoms are inevitable at some level. Now, it's proven that if you have a great lifestyle full of exercise, a great diet, a more positive attitude, that you can get through this much better. So lifestyle change is really, really important part. Supplements are really important part. But when it comes to the emotion, really, you've got to take control of that. And for me, what I had to do was work out what was brain fog and anxiety and the usual menopausal symptoms, which, you know, we talk about all the time, and what wasn't. And what wasn't for me was that constant feeling of abandonment and rejection and not good enough. And that was kind of my deciding line, really, is why am I still feeling that I'm not good enough when I'm just going through the menopause? It's normal. Sometimes I would go out and I would get triggered by something, and I would ask why am I feeling like this? What, you know, this is not really the menopause. This is more than that. And why am I still feeling it in my 50s, you know? And so I did some work and some investment looking at what it was. And basically, I think what happens is when you start to become postmenopausal, so you've done your perimenopause, you've done your 10, 12 years menopausal, your symptoms are starting to slow down. You do start to lose your testosterone, so it can affect you, you know, sexually, how you feel in your partnership, and that can make you feel really awful as a woman, you know, feel unattractive, you've got your belly fat coming, and you know, it just sort of starts to engulf you. It's about saying, okay, this is menopause, or this is me, this is happening, I'm going to take control of that with my lifestyle, but this isn't, this is more, this is my past. I keep referring to, you know, feeling unimportant, unloved, and why. And that's when you know that you've got a trauma that you need to dig deep and you need to sort. Yes, of course, it gets enmeshed into one, and you become heightened, you know, on your lower hormonal days, where you'll have days where you just cry and cry and cry all day. Sometimes you don't even know why you're crying. And another day you feel manic and feel like, you know, you could strangle somebody. And I think it's about just going along that sort of roller coaster ride, definitely keeping journals as to what's happening to you, what you're taking. If you choose to take HRT, for me, it was the best thing I ever did. I didn't do it until very late, but I did read the studies, and it was great for me. I know not everybody can. So if you're taking a supplement or a natural alternative, great. But look into it, get educated on it. Get educated on what menopause symptoms are, and anything outside that box, if you're feeling it's just overwhelming, the chances are it is your childhood that's coming back.
It's so, I mean, I can relate to literally everything you said there, Val, you know, as a woman approaching 50. And, you know, when I look back in my, you know, late 30s, as I was, you know, going through my divorce and working on myself, and I started getting neck pain, joint pain. I was getting a huge amount of palpitations, and I remember going to the doctor. Okay. And again, I just want to add in, and I know I said this in the introduction as well, you know, these are both mine and Val's opinions of various things. You must always seek your own healthcare provider for information regarding your own health history as well. But when I went to see my doctor with my neck pain, I was given painkillers. When I went to see my doctor about my palpitations, I was sent for an ECG, and I actually ended up getting diagnosed with a heart condition, actually, because I'd got an extended QT, and I had to have an abundance of tests, of genetic testing, all of this stuff. And it was really scary at the time. Actually, they wanted to put me on beta blockers at the time, which totally disagreed. So I came off them and ended up seeing this amazing cardiologist that really was, and they helped me realize palpitations were because I was perimenopausal. Not once did my GP ever mention to me that neck pain or palpitations was because of perimenopause. What happened to me then was I wanted to become an advocate for my own health as a woman in her 40s. So like yourself, Val, I'm on HRT, I have testosterone gel, and I'm also on progesterone now as well. So with the Mirena coil. And for me, again, it was life-changing. But what I love about what you are saying there, Val, is when you work with these women, you're looking at the menopause, you know, what elements of that, how can we work with lifestyle changes in a way that when you're experiencing trauma, say from narcissistic abuse, because it can feel like exercise, yeah, no thanks, I'm in freeze, I don't want to do anything, that you're supporting these women in a safe environment to understand their menopausal symptoms and to make those choices with a healthcare provider too, but also the navigation of healing their trauma, helping people dissect that with, this could be menopausal, this could be because of narcissistic abuse, this could be because of childhood trauma. And you're helping these women navigate all of that together, separately, together, all in between, to help them feel empowered and an advocate for themselves as we get older, to live their best life. Because this is not about us just existing now forevermore. And we see this in the media, as women often on the TV, we're portrayed as, old, and that's it, we're past it, and the N word, the menopause. And that is, I don't often swear, but that is just absolute BS. It really, really is. And, we can live an amazing life, do amazing things. And, I love the fact that you're really helping women awaken their potential for the rest of their life by understanding their body, both from a somatic perspective, from the trauma they may have experienced in narcissistic abuse, and equally the menopausal side of all of this, because we can't work with women in midlife without bringing the menopause and looking at their hormones.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it is about embracing, accepting that, between the ages of 35 to 60, you are going to experience in menopause. You are going to have, sometimes debilitating symptoms, but it's about saying, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to exist like this for the rest of my life and feel downtrodden, particularly if you're in a narcissistic relationship or marriage? You throw that in the mix, or, your husband has a midlife crisis and he decides he wants a younger model. And suddenly you're feeling really old. You've got this trauma going on. You've got, all your autoimmune diseases going on. It can actually bring you down. Your children have left home. You haven't really got anybody that you can talk to. So you have to empower yourself. You have to take control of this. I know it's not always easy, but there's people like us that can help. And it's about saying, no, I'm not going to take that route. I'm going to really, really try and fight back. And I think also the other thing about when we talk about negative past experiences and traumas and that the divorce that you've been through, it's about saying, like, these are my menopausal symptoms. What is it? What feeling, somatic feeling keeps coming back, I feel it in my stomach, and what is it? And that is the feeling that will be your trauma. It will be perhaps your husband's left, or perhaps your childhood, or a narcissistic sister, or a toxic friend, or it will be that. And that's the thing that you need to then work on and dig deep, take control of it, and start to manage it, is what I would say, is, learn how to manage it.
Because we're not taught it, are we? Let's be honest.
No.
That. So what do you want to say then, Val, if there's somebody listening right now who's maybe, hitting menopause, hitting midlife, even in their 60s even, and just thinking, oh, my life is over now? What do you want to say to that person?
No, it's absolutely not. And actually I would say, I think I said earlier, that I'm now postmenopausal. I know myself. I'm more confident in myself. I don't always get it right, but I'm really trying to make the most of myself and my life. And everyone can do that, no matter where you come from, what stage of life you've come from. You can do that, but you've got to be intentional. You've got to want to do that. You've got to dig deep. I'm not saying that it's going to be easy. You have to dig deep. It's quite painful. You have to bring it all out, work it all out, and I would ask you, do you really know yourself? Do you know why you behave the way you do? Do you know why you're a people pleaser? Do you know why you get hurt when people let you down at your dinner party? These were all the things I was asking myself. Why do I get so upset? And it's abandonment, rejection, all of those things. And then suddenly we can pluck it all out the bag and start working on it and start healing. And anyone can do it. Any woman can do it.
Oh, I love this. Now, just as we're coming up to a close, I know that you have something really exciting coming up on the 1st of June. Would you like to
Yeah.
tell my listeners a little bit more about what you're offering on the 1st of June?
Yeah, so on the 1st of June, I'm going to do a free hour webinar. It's predominantly for women, but of course men are welcome. And if you feel that you would like some privacy and don't want to turn your camera on, you can do that too. So it's a free 1 hour webinar on Zoom, basically reclaiming your power as a woman. And it's a woman's journey to healing from narcissistic abuse. And when we talk about narcissists, I'm not just talking about partners, husbands like mine. It can be your sister, it can be your parents, it can be someone you work with, someone that's, constantly getting at you. Do you even know what a narcissist is? Do you know what their behaviors are and how they make you feel? So we're going to look at all of that. We're going to work through it. I'm going to give you some resources and tools on how to do it. And then if you want to, we can set up our own group, private Facebook group. I'll support you through that journey. So it's going to be really, really exciting. So it's on the 1st of June at 7 p.m.
Absolutely. So anybody listening who wants to tune into that, remember it's free. It's on the 1st of June. It's 7 o'clock UK time. So it's open to anybody anywhere in the world as well. Just check out your own time zone for all this. And I'll pop the link in the show notes as well. So you can go and register right now and go and join Val. If you're a woman, like you say, even a man, sometimes going men through middle age, it can feel really, really tough and feel like you're going downhill. If you're struggling to understand narcissistic abuse, you feel like your emotions are all over the place, maybe because of menopause, perimenopause, then do go along and listen to this, because I know Val has a wealth of knowledge and experience in all of this too, from going through her own experience from the trauma of narcissistic abuse too. So, not only has she been through the menopause, she understands all of this, from an academic perspective as well. I know what an incredible coach Val is in this space as well. And I know she'll support you to give you hope, to give you light, to help you know that just whatever your age, there is hope that you can live an amazing life. And I genuinely mean whatever your age. I don't want even someone in their 70s or 80s to kind of think, oh, that's it now. No, definitely don't think like that. Life is not over. Life is so precious. So we want to all live the best life we possibly can. And sometimes we don't know how. We need people like yourself, Val, supporting us on that journey. So I just want to say, massive thank you.
Thank you.
Any parting words of wisdom for somebody maybe sat there literally thinking, no, this won't work for me. My life is over now. It's all downhill from now. What do you want to say to someone feeling like that?
I want women to know that it's okay to talk about how you feel. I know you can't talk to everybody, but it's okay to talk about those things that have happened to you, because by talking about them, we dig deep, we bring them to the surface, and we can heal them. And you can't do this on your own. You have to have help, you have to have support, and you have to have it from someone who's been through it. There's no point in me sitting here telling you what to do if I've never experienced it and I haven't got a clue. And I just think, please, you deserve to live a good life. Don't leave it as late as I did. Dig deep and come to the webinar, come and talk to people like us, and we can help you.
Yeah, and if you can't make the webinar either, I'll pop all of Val's links, her website. She's got some amazing articles on there with a blog and that to help and support and educate you, so you can be your own health advocate as well. I think it's really important that we put our own health in our hands. However amazing our healthcare providers are, ultimately we know our bodies, we understand that, and we need to have the voice for ourselves in all of this too. So it just remains for me to say a massive thank you for joining me today. Really appreciate it. It's a subject close to my heart. Menopause, narcissistic abuse, they go hand in hand as we get older. They really do, and it can really muddy the waters of each. So thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure many of our listeners have got something out of this, but I hope the biggest thing that people have got out of this is hope that life isn't over, that you can live an amazing life, and you know, whatever age you are, we can turn this all around, and there are things to do and utilize as well. So once again, thanks so much, Val. Thanks to everybody listening in. Hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next week on our next episode on the Narcissistic Abuse and Trauma Recovery podcast.